In the quiet suburbs of Waukesha, Wisconsin, a single house on a sleepy street held the echoes of an ordinary morning. Sunshine spilled across manicured lawns, and children rode bikes down the sidewalks. Inside, two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, were preparing for school. On May 31st, 2014, this unremarkable morning would erupt into a violent, shocking crime that would grip the nation, challenging perceptions of innocence, influence, and the line between fantasy and reality. The two girls were not strangers to each other. Anissa and Morgan had been close friends for years, connected through school and shared interests, but they were also deeply immersed in online communities fascinated by the fictional character known as Slenderman, a tall, faceless figure in a black suit, originating in internet horror forums. Over time, their obsession grew, evolving from fascination to fear, to a belief that Slenderman was real. They discussed him incessantly, read stories, and watched videos, and by 2014, Slenderman had become an all-consuming presence in their lives. The idea of Slenderman was initially just that, fiction. But in the minds of the girls, the lines between reality and fantasy blurred. Morgan believed that if they could commit an act of violence, they would demonstrate loyalty to Slenderman and gain his favor. He would protect them and allow them to live in his mansion, a fantastical world removed from ordinary suburban life. The belief was sincere, intense, and delusional. On the morning of May 31st, Morgan and Anissa lured their classmate Peyton Leutner, a fellow 12-year-old, on a walk through a wooded area near their homes. The girls were quiet, tense, but determined. They carried a kitchen knife, blunt and ordinary in appearance, but capable of extreme harm. Peyton walked with them, unsuspecting, talking about school and summer plans. She had no inkling of the danger that awaited her. Once deep in the woods, the attack began. Morgan struck first, plunging the knife repeatedly into Peyton's torso. The girl screamed, stumbling and falling to the leaf-strewn ground, blood soaking her clothes. Anissa restrained her friend, ensuring she could not escape. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with both attackers alternating blows. Peyton fought with every ounce of strength, screaming for help, but the girls' determination was methodical. Their plan was clear. They believed that killing her would demonstrate their allegiance to Slenderman. Peyton survived, though critically injured. She crawled through the woods, bleeding heavily, until a cyclist discovered her and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived within minutes, stabilizing her for transport to a nearby hospital. The swift response saved her life. Despite multiple stab wounds to the torso, lungs, and abdomen, she ultimately recovered, but the psychological trauma endured far beyond her physical wounds. Meanwhile, Morgan and Anissa attempted to flee. They left the scene calmly, walking through the neighborhood as if nothing had happened. Authorities arrived quickly, alerted by witnesses who saw the girls leaving the woods and by the cyclist who found Peyton. The police investigation moved swiftly. Within hours, both girls were arrested and taken into custody. The community, once peaceful and seemingly safe, was thrown into shock and disbelief. 12-year-old girls committing premeditated stabbing, it was incomprehensible. Investigators found extensive evidence of premeditation. The girls had researched Slenderman online, discussed the attack in chat rooms and text messages, and prepared knives. Their obsession with the character was documented through drawings, videos, and social media posts. Psychologists would later describe the influence of online horror culture on the girls as profound, demonstrating how virtual narratives can intertwine with real-world actions, especially when filtered through a vulnerable adolescent mind. Both Anissa and Morgan were subjected to psychiatric evaluations. Morgan Geyser, in particular, was found to be suffering from early-onset schizophrenia and exhibited delusional thinking. She believed that Slenderman was real, that he controlled the universe, and that he required proof of loyalty. Anissa Weier, while not diagnosed with a severe psychotic disorder, was heavily influenced by Morgan, and both shared an intense, codependent relationship that reinforced delusional beliefs. The legal proceedings were complex and unprecedented. Juvenile courts struggled to navigate a case involving premeditated violence, mental illness, and the influence of fictional characters. Morgan Geyser was charged as a juvenile, but the severity of the crime prompted prosecutors to seek extended treatment and confinement in a mental health facility. She ultimately pled guilty to attempted second-degree homicide and was sentenced to long-term psychiatric care, with periodic review for possible release under supervision. Anissa Weier was also charged, initially considered competent to stand trial. Her case highlighted the nuance of culpability in adolescent offenders. While she participated actively in the attack, psychological evaluations determined that her understanding of reality was impaired but not delusional to the same degree as Morgan's. In 2017, Anissa pled guilty to first-degree reckless homicide and was sentenced to 25 years in a mental health institution with the possibility of parole. Both sentences emphasized treatment over punishment, recognizing the unique psychological circumstances surrounding the crime. The Slenderman stabbing became a national and international story, prompting debate about internet culture, the influence of fictional narratives, and the responsibility of guardians and communities in monitoring children's exposure to violent content. Experts in juvenile psychology, law enforcement, and social media studies weighed in. Some argued that the girls were victims of their environment and digital immersion, while others emphasized personal accountability and the seriousness of premeditated violence, regardless of age or mental state. Beyond the immediate legal and psychological concerns, the case illuminated the vulnerabilities of adolescent cognition. 12-year-olds are in a stage of development where abstract thought, risk assessment, and impulse control are not fully matured. When combined with exposure to horror media and codependent friendships, this developmental stage can contribute to tragic outcomes. The girls' belief in Slenderman, though delusional, was sincere and shaped by both online immersion and their peer relationship. Survivor Peyton Leutner has since become a symbol of resilience. She recovered physically and, over time, emotionally, though the trauma of the attack remains. Her story has been documented in interviews, articles, and psychological studies, serving as a reminder of the real-world consequences of adolescent violence influenced by fantasy. Her ability to survive and heal contrasts sharply with the premeditated intent of her attackers, highlighting the unpredictable interplay between vulnerability, aggression, and survival. The media coverage surrounding the incident was intense. News outlets, documentaries, and online forums debated how such a horrific attack could occur in suburban America. True crime enthusiasts, psychologists, and educators dissected the case, exploring both the immediate causes and broader cultural implications. The narrative of Slenderman, a purely fictional creation, became intertwined with the lives of the girls, demonstrating the power of digital culture to shape perception, belief, and action, particularly in developing minds. In retrospect, the Slenderman stabbing is a cautionary tale on multiple levels. It underscores the responsibilities of parents, educators, and society in monitoring children's digital environments, the complexities of juvenile mental health, and the ways in which fantasy and reality can collide with tragic consequences. It also highlights how codependent friendships and social dynamics can magnify delusional thinking, creating circumstances in which premeditated violence is considered a logical solution. Legal scholars and criminal psychologists continue to study the case. They note that the premeditation, planning, and secrecy exhibited by Morgan and Anissa were striking, especially given their age. Yet they also acknowledge the mitigating influence of mental illness and delusional belief. Treatment and rehabilitation, rather than solely punitive measures, became central to the juvenile justice response, emphasizing the potential for recovery and reintegration while safeguarding the public. Today, the Slenderman stabbing is taught in criminal psychology and juvenile justice programs as a pivotal case. It demonstrates the intersection of mental illness, adolescence, digital culture, and premeditated violence. The story also serves as a grim reminder of how real-world harm can emerge from virtual narratives, and how vulnerable populations like children and adolescents may act on distorted perceptions of reality with devastating consequences. The quiet suburb of Waukesha has since returned to a semblance of normalcy. Yet the memory of that morning, a school day transformed into a crime scene, a 12-year-old's life nearly ended, and the unnerving awareness that fantasy can bleed into reality lingers. Families, survivors, and the girls themselves carry the consequences of that day in ways that will echo for decades. The incident remains a chilling example of how belief, obsession, and adolescent vulnerability can converge to produce violence that shocks the conscience. The Slenderman stabbing case stands as one of the most notorious juvenile crimes of the 21st century. It illustrates the intersection of imagination and reality, innocence and depravity, and the capacity for young people to commit premeditated acts when influenced by delusion and obsession. The crime, the investigation, and the aftermath all highlight the complexities of culpability, treatment, and understanding in the context of juvenile violence. It is a story of horror, psychology, and survival, with lessons for parents, educators, and mental health professionals alike. Thank you for listening to Homicide Files. Subscribe for more true crime stories.